Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Hey everyone, Lani here to let you know that we have a special treat waiting for you at the end of the episode today. Remember when we were discussing Adam a few weeks back and I very inexpertly talked a little bit about Frankenstein, which I know nothing about? Well, Dr. Paul Moffett of ClockworksAcademy.com was so kind as to record us a little mini lecture on Frankenstein relating back to Adam on Buffy. So don't turn the show off when you hear the music at the end. It is worth it. Also, go visit ClockworksAcademy.com to check out Dr. Moffat's Frankenstein course and other courses, and you can follow him on Twitter at Dr. Moffat with Dr. spelled out, 2 F's, 2 T's. All right, now on with the show.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar and Mr. Evil Plan Face Stealer, Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert, an evil robot constructed from evil parts that look like me, designed to do evil, Lani Diane Rich, and we're here today to talk about The Replacement, the third episode of Season 5.
The Replacement aired on October 10th, 2000, and was written by Jane Espenson and directed by James A. Contner.
As y'all know, we are a fully spoiled Buffy podcast. That means we may talk about anything in Buffy from any part of the show at any time. So be prepared. Make sure you've already watched before you listen to us. Bad hours, frequent bruising, cranky monsters. Let's go on patrol. In The Replacement, Xander's basement living situation becomes untenable, so the gang goes with him to check out a cool apartment.
We can have the Scooby meetings in the living room, and Giles can explain the boring things over there.
But he can't really afford it. Anya gets upset because despite the fact that she has an apartment of her own and presumably some kind of job or demon pension to keep her living in some manner of style based on her hair, makeup, and clothes, she only exists on the show when she's in his crappy basement.
And I don't really feel like taking a tour of beautiful things that I can't have.
At the magic shop, a glowy-eyed demon looking for the Slayer hits Giles in the head with a glowy stick and leaves.
Well, I'm not dead or unconscious, so I say bravo for me.
Giles finds the demon, named Toth, in his research. Unusual because he uses tools to fight. And he smells weird, kind of like garbage. That night, they head to the dump to look for Toth. And in the fight, Toth shoots Xander with his demon blaster, knocking him back into a pile of garbage. The demon floats away, and the gang pulls Xander out of the pile of garbage, without noticing that they're leaving behind another Xander, still knocked out in the garbage, who wakes up the next morning.
Anya, you trying to use the hot blade again?
Xander goes home to discover that some guy who looks exactly like him is in his basement apartment.
What? No way. Who is... me? What am I doing in there?
He rushes to call Buffy from a payphone, but shiny new Xander walks by, and Xander follows him, watching as he gets a promotion, signs for the new apartment, and gets hit on by the apartment manager, all while playing with a shiny coin. When shiny Xander comes out of the apartment, Xander jumps him, but shiny Xander knocks him out and runs off, leaving our Xander on the floor. Xander follows shiny Xander to Giles and watches through the window as shiny Xander tells Buffy, Giles, and Riley that they have to find and kill the demon that stole his face.
Don't worry, Xander. Whatever stole your face, it has to deal with the Slayer now.
Xander goes to Willow and tells her things only the two of them know to prove that he's the real Xander. She hasn't seen shiny Xander and has no idea what he's talking about. They run through some theories on what the face-stealing demon could be.
It's a robot. It's an evil robot constructed from evil parts that look like me, designed to do evil.
Or it's Toth.
Or It's Toth.
Buffy, Giles, Riley, and Shiny Xander come to the same conclusion, and Buffy tells Shiny Xander to hide out with Anya while she kills the other Xander. At Willow's, she goes into magic mode to help, but Xander has doubts. Shiny Xander is shiny and is living Xander's life better than he is. He's about to let Shiny Xander have his life when he realizes that also means Shiny Xander gets Anya, and he can't allow that to happen. He needs Anya.
Really? Xander rushes to Anya's place to find her and listens to the message left by Shiny Xander telling Anya to meet him at the new apartment. He goes through Anya's things looking for something, then busts into the new apartment and confronts Shiny Xander. Meanwhile, Willow rushes to Giles's to tell them about real Xander, and they compare notes, with Buffy and Riley realizing that their Xander was a little different.
Our Xander. Did he seem a little...
He seemed kind of forceful and confident. That's not Xander.
Giles goes to the books and discovers that both Xanders are Xander. Toth's blaster stick was intended to split Buffy into a strong Buffy and a weak one. He could kill the weak one easily, also killing the strong one.
So the same goes for the Xanders. We lose one, we lose them both.
At the new apartment, Xander pulls a gun on Shiny Xander, and they wrestle for the gun. Just as Shiny Xander gets it and pulls it on Xander, Buffy and Riley rush in, and Buffy convinces Shiny Xander to give her the gun and explains the situation. Turns out the shiny hypnotizing coin is just a flattened nickel. Just then, Toth busts through the door, blows a hole in the carpet with his demon blaster, and gets stabbed through the heart by Buffy's sword.
Oh, yeah. That cleaning deposit's gone. I was thinking the same thing. Hey, do you suppose we're both Xander?
At the magic shop, as they set up for the reintegration spell, Xander asks Shiny Xander how he managed to get the promotion and the attention of the apartment manager, and it turns out it was just because he's good at his job and cute. Huh. Willow ends the spell, and Xander is one again. The next day, Riley and Buffy are helping Xander pack up his stuff in the basement, and Riley talks about how Buffy makes him feel like he's split in two. On fire and peaceful at the same time. He goes on about how amazing she is, and then casually drops this little bomb.
But she doesn't love me.
All right, Noelle.
boy.
I know, right? So the replacement. First of all, can we just have a moment of appreciation for Jane Espenson, who is so funny and so adorable, and I love her work.
And is doing God's work, really, of making me, love Xander so
And
much.
Making me love Riley. I like Riley in this episode.
Wait a minute. Is this also a behind the scenes personality swap? Did you and I switch?
don't know.
Did something happen? Okay.
Who are you,
even knows?
Noelle?
Who even knows?
Who even knows?
It could be anything.
Yeah. So what did you think? How do you like it?
I like a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I also am sort of not confused by a lot of it, but interested. It raises many questions for me.
Yes,
And
okay.
and partly I'm with Riley at the end when he says, "Does anyone else just want to lock them in separate rooms and do experiments on it?"
Oh my God.
I'm like, yeah, actually, a little bit. I really want to know. I have so many questions about the whole being split in two thing.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also there's some, obviously this is a light, charming episode in a lot of ways with some really big, twisty, crunchy, difficult things sprinkled in, or maybe not even sprinkled, maybe just folded in to the batter of the story. And I just lost my metaphor.
Oh, that's okay, baby.
But
I do that all the time.
That's what we do here at Chipperish. We have the metaphor and then we lose the metaphor.
Absolutely. Mix it with another metaphor.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. But opening with the two couples on the that whole scene feels uncharacteristically Buffy to me. There's something about it that feels a little bit off, but in a way that I kind of enjoy.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my sense of the entire episode. There's something really off here, but I also really like it.
Well, we're in Xander's POV, and whenever we're in Xander's POV, it almost plays like a Bizarro world. Everything always feels a little bit off when we're so deep in Xander's POV. But the thing I liked about having the couples in the beginning is that basically we have this whole episode that's kind of about duality after an entire season of, talking about identity stories.
Right.
And here we've got this duality of identity, and then we've got these two couples kind of reflecting, like there's one couple that's clearly, supposed to be like the best couple, and then there's one that's Anya and Xander,
It's kind of limping along a little bit, right? But then,
yes, but Riley's so sweet.
But then, of course, we find out, it's this nice bookend situation, right? Because there's this awkwardness as we open,
right?
With Riley and Buffy and Xander and Anya kind of doing the double date night thing in Xander's basement. I mean, and of course, Willow and Tara are notably absent.
Yes.
Presumably they're babysitting Dawn, working on their chess moves. Who knows?
I guess, yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about this scene, this opening scene feels really long to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's that way on purpose to kind of build up the general awkwardness of this 4-person dynamic where like Riley is trying so hard. Riley's so sweet. Riley's really trying.
I know.
Anya clearly has something on her mind in addition to the hot plate, which she brings up several times throughout the episode and is like this little symbol of her.
It is representative of dissatisfaction, yes.
Like her material dissatisfaction, but also like her existential crisis about like things dying.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it. I love the hot plate as metaphor. And of course, Buffy is enjoying the studying since when?
And it's a history. It's a history textbook. Like, she has never enjoyed history. Like, that is one of the things she's always struggled with. Although I like it. I'm excited. I also am very excited that she is managing to take a class in college that's just history. Like, I don't think there's a generic just history class in college. You're taking, American history from 1754 through the Reconstruction or something like that, right? Like, you take very specific history classes, in college, and the book is clearly a high school textbook. And I'm like, what could possibly be interesting? Because those like generic, it's history, like high school textbooks that just cover everything are the worst. They're terribly written. There's nothing compelling about them. They're not, like telling interesting stories. It's just a recitation of facts and dates and whatever. Whereas in college, you get to read, like, I took British history and did the, biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine. And like, that was a whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, that's interesting, So I find it, all of that in that one, I'm going way too long for this one shot of Buffy, but it's so funny. And then they're watching this show and then Buffy's, critiquing like that expertise. When you get somebody with expertise watching a movie that involves that area of expertise, I love it because they just can't, just like, it's
the most fun. I actually really love it.
Kick, raw enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
And it's interesting because Buffy is attending to everything except Riley. Like, presumably she's here with Riley.
Yeah.
And Xander and Anya, but she's here, like, she's here as part of a couple. And of course, what she's doing is studying. And then she's critiquing the movie. And she's not really, she's not really tuned in to Riley.
No.
Meanwhile, Riley's tuned into everything. Poor Riley.
Right. Riley is Mr. Empath in this episode. Like, he's rubbing Buffy's shoulders and doing a good job of it, because when he takes his hands away because he realizes he's, making Xander feel mad, she says, no, where's the rubbing, right? So Riley is actually like one of my favorite things in this episode, which is so bizarre for me.
That's how we know it's a Bizarro episode.
I think because we're so deep in Xander's POV, and Xander's kind of a little in love with Riley, I think. Like a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely got this idea that the Buffy Riley dynamic is the dynamic.
Yeah.
And of course it's not, because we get this sad, the bookend of the opening scene with the final scene where, you know, Riley has that moment with Xander about relationships, and I'm just like in pain. Like, why?
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting for Riley to confide in Xander in that way. But it also, I mean, maybe because it's Jane Espenson, it works for me. It doesn't feel like Riley, but I'm totally okay with that because I love the pain of that.
I know.
She doesn't love me. Oh my God. What?
It's so like, and he's going on about how wonderful she is and all of this stuff. And he has that nice moment too earlier with Buffy, right? Where Buffy, in also a Bizarro World move, initiates an actual conversation about, oh, did you wish that I was split and you could have just Buffy, because I know you don't like the Slayer gig and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, I want all of you, you know, and he says the absolute right thing. And I do believe that it's genuine. Although I think he does want all of her. He just wants all of her to be just a little bit weaker than he is, you know, which we'll see. We'll deal with that later, because in this episode, Riley is really fantastic. And then he, you know, tells Xander all of this stuff, and says, you know, but she doesn't love me. But he doesn't, you know, tell Buffy that. And I guess, like, out of all of these times where they should have had a conversation, and I'm always like, idiots, just talk, you know, and Buffy doesn't ever want to talk. And then we've got Bizarro Buffy, who actually initiates a conversation. And then Riley won't. And I kind of understand why he won't, because if he tells her that he knows she doesn't love him, she's just going to say, well, yes, of course I love you. And you know, and he's still not going to believe it. He's still not going to feel it. He knows. Yeah. He knows that he's, you know, that he's the normal guy, you know, that he's not the vampire, that he's, you know, he's the anti-angel, that he basically is there to not be Angel, you know? And that's a tough place to be in, to know, you know, that he's sort of like normal guy. I mean, Angel rebound. I think that Riley exists in this space because of Angel. And I think that he knows that. Yeah. Yeah. And it sucks. And I hate it. I know. And it's really sad. And it really makes me have so much empathy for Riley. And I love how empathetic he is. He is feeling everything from everybody he's on to. Like, you can see him like having empathy for Anya, who's hurt, and having empathy for Xander, who's humiliated, right? You know, in this terrible basement, right? All of it is, it's a really, you're right. It's long and it's awkward. And the ending scene is also a little bit long and a little bit weird. We could have just had Riley and Xander packing up, but instead we've got Buffy and Anya not wanting to do anything. And can't we just pack up Buffy like a mule? She's got Slayer strength, you know, like all this stuff. I enjoy that. That's very Anya. It's all very and cute. It's very on brand. It's very on brand for Anya. So we've got that whole thing that we don't really need. And then we come into this really nice moment of, you know, masculine community, where you have two men who are having a conversation, like the way we have the Bechdel test, right? That women are having a conversation that is not about a man, like men having a conversation that is actually about feelings and about them. Like, you know, that's also how something that's nice. Yeah. It's really nice to see that, you know, and I like that Xander is our male heart, you know, in the 5-man band kind of thing, that he is the emotional connection. And it's taken him a couple of seasons to like fully, you know, come to this. But I think that the replacement is a huge turning point for Xander as a character. Oh, for because sure. It's, you know, there's pre-replacement Xander that didn't know what his strengths were, you know, and then there's post-replacement Xander who actually starts, like, that's my Xander who I love, like from here on out, that he seems to know him, that he has strengths. We give him competency. He becomes the guy who fixes all of the broken things, which I really love. It's really nice. Well, and the final shot is
Xander's reaction to
Yeah.
Buffy and Riley being all coupley after Riley has, not only talked about his feelings, but also has revealed what he knows about his relationship with Buffy and presumably like where it's going. Like if he has these feelings and he knows that she doesn't, he knows that this is not sustainable. So we have this shot, we hold on Xander watching them be a couple, like everything is normal, but he knows the truth about the emotional landscape, below all of that.
Right.
And it's a great visual cue that we are introducing or reintroducing Xander as the heart of the group, as Xander as the one who sees and knows things that other folks in the narrative don't. Like it's a really, like I said at the opening of the show, like it's this really like deep, meaningful stuff, but layered in here with this like light and totally hilarious, like the just the bizarro world antics of there are two Xanders and one of them is like bumbling, struggling Xander, and one of them is, what is it that he says? He's so smooth.
He's so smooth. You have to know he's not me. But the thing that's so funny is that, we follow through. I mean, they are both Xander, as we discover at the end, right? But we follow through with the Xander that's messy and screwed up and covered in garbage.
I call him lesser Xander in my notes, which
garbage
feels
Xander.
Judgy, but that's I don't.
But
mean
it is. It's like it's lesser. It's garbage Xander, right? It's like these are all the things, but this is how he views himself. Like he identifies more completely. How you have to know he's not me. He's all smooth.
He's all
right.
smooth. Yeah.
But it is Xander. And so I love that they give him that competence, that they give him, this is an episode that reflects Xander back at himself in a way that is actually really positive, that he can see his own strengths, And it's funny because there's that moment too, where Buffy and Riley are like, well, our Xander was kind of forceful and confident. It was a little weird.
Yeah. And Willow immediately says, that's not Xander.
That's not Xander. Exactly.
Because, Willow, who's known Xander the longest, has seen him at his worst.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than she's had the most opportunity. But I love the certainty with which Willow says, that's not Xander.
It's not Xander.
Yep. But that point of view, that like super deep in lesser Xander.
Yeah.
Garbage Xander. It's so mean. I don't mean it, like, because he's so sweet.
Yes.
But that point of view is really the only reason that the fake out works, that we think that this couldn't possibly, like, there's no reason for us to believe that this is also Xander.
Well, especially because they really do. Like it's almost lying to your audience but except that we're so deep in Xander's POV that anything suspicious. So I think it's not lying to, but like things like when shiny Xander is all, yes, it must be Toth. And like, when we see him with the nickel, and he's shining it in people's faces, and then all of a sudden he's got a new job, and all of a sudden this woman is hitting on him, and like all of this stuff. It's the kind of thing that like Xander is looking, like garbage Xander, as awful as that is, garbage Xander is looking for any reason to believe that this version of himself is evil. So he's attaching to all of these things. Now, granted, some of these things that are happening are not happening while garbage Xander is watching. So we can't really blame it. Like it is a little bit of cheating. It is a little bit of lying to the audience, the way that we have smooth Xander, or shiny Xander, saying certain lines, sounding evil, all of this kind of stuff. But overall, like it's not a terrible, egregious violation of don't lie to your audience. They skate by on this one. Just barely.
They really do just kind of like get by with a technicality. Like when more so Xander, Shiny Xander says Harris. And, he's on the construction site. He's clearly, he clearly knows his name and like where to go and stuff. But then his boss calls him and he says Harris in recognition in this way where it kind of sounds like
he doesn't know his name.
Oh yes, like he's pretending.
Right, exactly. So they really did put that stuff in there it is lying to your audience. Except I think when you're in Garbage Xander's POV, it's not because he's going to be clearly assigning importance to things that may just be random, like the nickel, but at the same time, like we really are setting up the audience to believe with textual evidence that Shiny Xander is not actual Xander,
that we've got one real Xander and one imposter Xander.
Exactly.
Particularly when he's talking to Anya about being human, and he says she says something like, you have no idea what that's like, and he says being suddenly human, I can imagine what that would be like, and you're all like, the audience is going, no, he's a demon or whatever, whatever we think he is at that point. But what I like about that particular fake out is, no, he's just like, he just has empathy. Like he's just trying to imagine what that would be like. And that's kind of great.
Because that's good Xander at his best. That's what he does. What he does best is fix shit and feel other people's pain and like understand other people, from this emotional space. And I love it. I love this transitional episode for Xander because I think it gives us like a new level of Xander. Unfortunately, Xander is still going to suck in the way that he treats Anya, but we'll deal with that as we move forward. That is like the only thing. I so hate the way that he talks to Anya in general, not necessarily in this episode, but in general,
and Willow kind of gives us that little beginning of like, hey, you just now thought of Anya? Like there's somebody walking around who looks just like you, and Matt, like this is the last thing that you come up with.
Right. And who did he go to? He didn't go to Anya and explain who he is, right? He went to Willow.
Yeah, his first thought is, I need Buffy. And then
his second thought is, I need Willow.
He goes to Willow.
Yeah. And then when he says, I need Anya, and Willow goes, really?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay, Willow doesn't do much in this episode, but Willow is goddamn fantastic in this episode.
She really, really is. I mean, the Willow that we're starting to see, I don't know if this is new in season 5. It feels new in season 5. The Willow who is both her kind of childish self, the Willow who says, really? When Xander says he needs Anya. But also this adult, competent witch who says, well, it's really just Toth's spell that's keeping you apart. So here we go. We're going to do this thing.
Let the spell be ended, and then boom. Yeah.
And I mean, just the competence and confidence with which she just throws out things like, goddess of childbirth, she's got some heft to her in this like really appreciative way. There's like this,
I know,
there's like this deeper knowledge of something. I don't know if it's the new, I don't know if it's the new relationship, if it's the new deeper appreciation and understanding of magic, if it's we made it through the first year of college and now we're a little bit feeling like more on stable ground. But this Willow feels like my Willow a little bit. I'm like, yeah, that's right. But she's both like she manages to be both upset because Xander is upset, and also there's a faux Xander running around apparently, but also super confident and competent and, that's not Xander. But she does give us that little bit of like, hey, the Xander Anya relationship is not, maybe not great because, you didn't think of Anya until just now. Yeah. Dude.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't his first or second thought, you know? So it was, it's tough because I love Anya. Like, I love Anya so much, but I hate her relationship with Xander. I hate the way she's not appreciated. You know, I love Willow's delivery of, really? But I hate that that's the attitude that we all like, kind of, that textually is supported for Anya. That Anya's like, you know, that kind of thing. But I really, really like her. And I like her. I'm going to love her in season 7. That's when we get her back. Or like after Hell's Bells in season 6, after she breaks up with Xander, we get some fantastic Anya from that point forward, you know? But while she's with Xander, it's really, God, he dims her light, man. And he just, the way that he talks to her and the way that he dismisses her and fails to appreciate her. There's a lot of stuff wrong with that.
And it's such a bummer in part because everyone else goes along with it to one degree or another. Like, she is this kind of unfortunate add-on to the group. Right. Like, everyone else responds to her like, oh, really? Like, Anya's here? Or like, Anya's... It's not good.
Like, nobody likes her. Nobody respects her. She has 1,000 years of demon knowledge in that little noggin there. Let's use it, you know? And she does often have information. You know, she had information about Dracula. She had known him. She had met him, you know? So her experience, she actually brings quite a lot to the Scooby table, and yet is constantly dismissed. And and it's always a disappointment to me. I always find it really disappointing the way that she is so easily dismissed by everybody. I mean, you know, but mostly because Xander is, you know, her primary relationship, that he's supposed to be in her corner. He's supposed to be defending her. He is instead, like, for a big chunk of what's to come, taking the shots at her, you know, at her expense. So I find that disappointing. But in this episode, it's very, very sweet. In this episode, it's all very, very sweet, aside from the, you know, very telling thing that he didn't even think about her. Can we talk about the magic shop for a little bit? Because I am so happy. Like, the new sets, we've got Xander's apartment, which is going to play into, you know, that's where we're going to be setting a lot of things. We've got the magic shop. We've got Giles in the magic shop. Giles as a business owner. Giles is no longer wearing sweaters, baby. He's buttoned down. Giles, like, you know, we had tweed Giles up until, you know, he got fired by the Watchers. Then it's sweater Giles, and now we got button down Giles. And I gotta say, magic shop owning button down Giles is, like, I think my favorite Giles.
I think every Giles is your favorite Giles. Like,
they're all good.
I mean,
I do love Giles, even when Giles is not good,
interesting and problematic,
but, you know, and I still love him, and I'm not proud of it. Okay, I'm not proud. I'm just being honest.
But this Giles, the Giles we get in this episode, is some peak Giles.
Oh God,
I mean, his whole, like, oh God, his whole bit with the box. Yes. You know, miscellaneous curses. Be lucky if I don't, what is it? Like, hex my hand off at the wrist, or whatever it is he said. It's so funny.
I know.
And it's for his own benefit. Yeah. He's cracking a joke there for his own benefit.
Just
no one else is there.
Just to amuse himself. I know. And
he is making his own fun because he is a business owner and he is, like, doing his thing. And then, of course, you know, he spins around and Toth is there and he pulls out the rabbit's foot and we get some fantastic, like, physical comedy from Giles, which I always enjoy.
And then when he's trying to hit him with the goddess statue, and then we see him later, you know, swiping the goddess statue. And of course, you know, Willow has her, it has some heft line, you know.
And then Riley takes some swings with the statue. It's so good. There's some really good But then he says, he's like, I'm not dead or unconscious, so I say bravo to me.
For
Like, he's so pleased with himself.
Yes.
And then one of my absolute favorite bits in the entire episode is when Willow comes bursting into his house and he says, wait, where is it? Oh, God damn it. I know I have it written down because it's so great. She just comes busting in and he says, I swear this time I know I had that locked.
I know. Which is just, because everybody always just comes walking through the front door. Like, nobody knocks at Giles's,
No, nobody knocks.
Yeah.
It's a great, but it's also, that's a great conceit of fiction, right? And I love it when we pull those things out. We're like, hey, wait a second.
We reference those things.
Yeah, we reference, like Giles has referenced his own, not getting knocked out. When he falls in Buffy versus Dracula, when he falls in the chick pit.
Yes.
It's like, well, at least you didn't get knocked out this time. Good show, Giles. Like we've got, I think post-unemployment Giles is now like self-aware Giles.
He is very self-aware.
He knows his role on the show.
He's very genre savvy too.
Yes.
I think this is when Giles realizes that he is a character on a TV show. Like he seems to have this metatextual knowledge.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when they're talking about what's going on with the Xanders, and he says, oh, dear Lord. And then Buffy and Willow keep talking, and he says, I said, oh dear Lord. And Buffy says, you always say that.
And he's like, because I always have something relevant, Yeah, it's really, really cute. And it is very, very self-aware, which I love. And I'm so happy to have the magic shop. I love that set. I love the back room, where he and Buffy train. I love the whole, I love the stairway that goes up to the bookshelves where he keeps the dangerous books. And it's so great. And the little, and putting the pentagram on the floor and making the space to do the spell. And of course, candles and pretense from Willow.
Candles and pretense. I love, I got us way off track with the magic shop set, but I absolutely love that it gets bigger inside every time we go in there.
It's like a TARDIS. It's like bigger on the inside. Yeah.
How is there so much square footage? Like when we first went into the shop, it was this like tiny little hole in the wall magic shop, and now it's like this vast performance space.
It's got magic shop creep, If ever there was a shop that was going to have magical square footage, it would be a magic shop. Especially on a Hellmouth. Come on.
Really?
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love the magic shop, and I'm so, so pleased that we're there. We get a little bit of Spike in this episode. Right? Just a little bit. And we're seeding his obsession with Buffy. Like he's at the dump. He's on Toth's side. And he's stealing a mannequin that he then goes and dresses like the Slayer. And we are about to find out, like we are very close to him waking up from a dream and realizing consciously that he is in love with Buffy. But, last week with Harmony, you're singing my song, I'm going to kill the Slayer. Then he's got this mannequin that he's dressing up as Buffy and, kicks her head off and then picks it up and runs his fingers gently over her face. And God, I love it. And it's so funny because I don't remember all the seeding that they do so early in season 5, but we are getting off to a rockin' start. And we also have, oh God, Joyce's "This Must Be My Two Teenage Girls in the House" headache.
Right.
Oh,
my stomach just dropped.
I know.
I was like,
we know what's coming.
Well, and we're starting that already.
Like so soon.
Oh my, and it's also, God, the thing, okay, there's so much going on here, but the thing that's such a bummer about that is that she's right. Like she's making a joke in that moment, but it's like, like this is literally, the creation of Dawn is literally what kills Joyce. And
do we have that textually?
Well,
that it's what causes her
brain
cancer?
tumor, aneurysm, whatever it is. Like do we have it textually? I'm not sure we do. but it's pretty.
But it does feel like
it feels
a butterfly
so
effect,
direct
right?
because it does. Because that whole
correlation
thing
is not causation. Just because they happen at the same time doesn't mean that they're necessarily related.
true,
but doesn't mean that they're not.
But it fucks with her memory, and like there's something I don't know.
It feels like it.
I don't know. It feels very direct, and yeah.
Oh God, it's so hard.
Bad.
This episode, for such a fun, like whenever I think about The Replacement, I always think of how fun and funny and light it is.
But Xander, no waiting.
Right? Exactly. We get we get Joyce's headache. Joyce's brain tumor being seated here. We get as much as I like Riley in this episode, the downfall of Riley is starting now. With his understanding that Buffy does not love him, and Spike's obsession with Buffy, which goes to, some very, very interesting places as we move forward. That itself is seated here. Like all of these things are starting to happen, and this is, I think, part of the reason why I love season 5 so much, because in season 5 we come in and we are not fucking around. Like there is a plan. We know what we're doing. We're working very deliberately toward something. And I love season 5. I know that there's, some issues. We'll talk about it as we go. But overall, I think, especially just because for me, my primary value is the narrative,
Mm-hmm. And they know what they're doing at this point.
Yeah, they are confidently moving forward in a structured, choreographed march. Like these people are doing what they're doing and they know what they're doing. And it is so delightful for me just from a narrative perspective. And I love it.
Yeah. And everything supports that narrative. We're talking about, you're talking about the writers and the directors and folks behind the camera know what they're doing and they know where the story is going. But these actors have also spent a significant amount of time with these characters as well. So, as we're watching characters that we love become more themselves and grow up and mature into their roles within the group, we're also watching actors mature as performers. Like they, as everyone grows up, they get better.
Yeah.
Like the actors get better at acting. And in fact, it's not in my notes, but I do want to just shout out Nick Brendan playing both Xanders is fantastic.
He did play both Xanders, but he has a twin brother. So I think whenever
shit.
Yeah, whenever any Xander. Yeah, whenever any Xander had a line, I think he delivered the lines. Like if it was just if it was a shot of just, one Xander, then that was Nick Brendan, So, he swapped out and played both roles, I believe. But like his twin brother was there for all the double shots and like the two of them laughing together. And when they, so some of it was done by his brother. I think that because I was watching it and I was like, I've seen this enough. When you meet identical twins and you're like, I literally can't tell you apart.
It's some white guy. All white men look the same to me. I'm sorry. But I just I don't know. I just love his performance is fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it is. It's really, really good.
And his reaction. I love Xander reacting to Xander.
Yes.
He's really, really good.
Yeah. So Nick Brendan is really, really good.
And as we move through, the seasons with these actors and these characters, everybody just gets better. Nobody was a slouch in the acting department to start.
Yeah.
But dang.
Yeah.
Dang.
We're seeing a lot of leveling up. I think, there's a lot of leveling up. But one of the things I find really interesting and possibly, this is one of the things like I love I love an identity story in narrative. There's two kinds. Like, I love an identity story and I love a love story, be it a romantic sexual love story or just a best friend's love story or whatever. Just any two people who love each other story, right? You know, those are always, I know, those are always like, they speak to me like so deeply. And I think that's part of the reason why Buffy has always appealed to me so deeply, is that we do spend so much time playing an identity. Like season 4 was all about everybody kind of figuring out their individual identity. But throughout, we have a lot of these episodes, right, where we have identity swaps, you know, Giles and a new man. We had Buffy and Faith and Who Are You? We had the doppelganger, Willow and Doppelgangland. And now we have, you know, dual Xander and the replacement. We spent a lot of time splitting people's identities apart, doing Bizarro World episodes where everybody's suddenly different, something blue. You know, where we are able to explore who somebody is through exploring who they're not, you know, in a lot of these different episodes, you know. And I find that so funny and interesting and crunchy, the way that they keep going back to this. I mean, you know, like the episode that swapped Buffy and Faith, of course, was called Who Are You? And I think the Who Are You is a central question throughout the run of Buffy, because who any particular character is at the beginning is completely different from who they are at the end. Like, everybody has an arc. I don't think there's anybody who remains a static character through the run, you know, any significant character. I don't think there's anybody who remains static. Everybody arcs, you know. You know, we'll even see, I think, sometimes our villains arc. You know, we saw the mayor arcing into that love story with Faith. Right, you know.
Oh, I love a villain arc.
It's so good. It's so good. So I love the way that Buffy plays with this identity and the replacement. What's so fun about the replacement is that, you know, we see who people are by who they aren't. We see Giles in the context of being a demon and how that changes who he is for a little while inside, right? And he feels that rage and all that kind of stuff. You know, we see Buffy, you know, and being Faith, right? In the body and experience of Faith, and all of this. So we have all of this identity showing who people are by showing who they aren't. And here we have Xander showing us who Xander is by showing us who Xander is. And I think that is such a wonderful twist on that play space.
And showing Xander who Xander is, which brings me to, you know, brings me back to, we do our point of view, our Xander point of view for this episode is all in this like lesser Xander, basement Xander headspace, because he's gotten very bogged down in that space and he's lost touch with the part of him that is super competent at his construction job despite not having construction experience, and who is adorable and gets flirted with, and who is able to, you know, literally build things and make things for himself, and, you know, have that emotional connection with Anya about her existential crisis. Like, he has this opportunity to see the good things about himself that he's lost touch with in his, you know, basement depression. And really, I don't blame him. I mean, you know, he's joking about it, but his parents come home and he says something about his parents being home. And then he says, oh no, I was wrong. Just some incompetent burglars.
Right.
Which there's so much pain behind that.
I know, it's so sad. And here we are getting so much, like the first time I think we textually really acknowledged how bad his home situation was in Restless, right? We kind of hinted at it. But here we have like an even stronger textual acknowledgement of how damaging that childhood has been, you know, for Xander. And it's really, I mean, it's played off in this, you know, funny joke, but we are like, Riley is our POV character in that scene, and we are feeling that discomfort. Yeah. So to show who Xander is by showing who Xander is and making that a
a visual and textual distinction, like pulling out all of the Xander strengths and putting them in the show in their own space. It's like it's really, really good. I really like it.
This show, I think for anybody out there who is a writer, watching Buffy and keeping a careful eye on what they do, like the ways in which there's something about, like, whatever the faults of Buffy might be, and I understand complaints about the show and about some of the things that the show does, like I get it. But there is a really brilliant way that this group of writers will play with and subvert, you know, the standard way that things are done in order to, like, not just to subvert it, you know, which I think the whole concept of Buffy, I think, was just to subvert something, to subvert it, you know. But what they're doing with it, what they've been doing with it, it's subverting these things, not just to say, oh, I did it different, but using that subversion to dig deeper into, like, who these characters are and what they're doing. I think that honestly, like, I started studying story with Buffy, you know, and learned so much of what I've learned from Buffy. And that's why I keep coming back to this text to talk about it, because I think that it is incredibly rich, you know, as far as, like, a lot of these discussions go. I mean, here we are, we've got this silly dual identity thing, and we're talking about, you know, Anya's existential crisis and the duality of identity and what does this mean and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there's so much to talk about, even in something that appears to be just a silly episode. But there are so many really wonderful things going on. And as a writer, when you're not sure what to do or where to go with something, trying to think the way that a Buffy writer would think. What would a Buffy writer do? You know, here I have something, I want to talk about identity. How do I do that? You know, and by digging into these episodes like this, like, I've learned so much about writing and storytelling from these writers because of the way that they subvert these expectations. And then Jane Espenson does it, you know, like, I mean, you know, like a figure skater, right? You watch a figure skater and it's so beautiful and smooth, and they make it look so easy. You know, every time I watch a figure skater, and I know I can't get on the ice without falling down. Like, I know what kind of skill I have. But when I watch a figure skater, I think, imagine being able to, like, I can imagine myself being able to do that, right? Because they're so beautiful and they make it look easy. Like, they're just the hardest thing in the world. They make it look easy. And I think that's what Espenson does. She does these things that are so much more complex than they appear. And when she does them, she just makes it look like it's just a simple, she's just joking around. She's just writing the funny jokes. But what she's actually doing with the narrative underneath that, really, really impressive. She's always impressed the hell out of me. Yeah.
Yeah. Jane Espenson is a master of... we're taking this funny little story, or we're taking this funny little scenario and building all of this complexity,
there's so much more
into it. And specifically with point of view. That's something that I love about the Buffy episodes that Jane Espenson writes, is so many of them are a shift in point of view somehow. Yeah. I mean, I just can't wait to get to Storyteller. Like, I know.
Oh my God, I know.
So, like, I'm just like, okay, all right. Just like, you know, there's like an episode countdown in my head. I'm like, oh my God.
To Storyteller, so I know. There's certain episodes that throughout the run, I'm always like, this is my next, like, episode that I cannot wait to talk about, you know?
My God.
And then there are episodes that I do not want to talk about.
You're like, do we have to?
No, I mean, like, good episodes, but like The Body... Not looking forward to that. Although there's so much to talk about. I've taught it in my class. It's beautiful. Like, there's so much, but dear God, like, I just don't want to cry on this podcast.
Come on. It's not a Chipperish podcast if you don't cry at some point.
No. All right. So, Noelle, what are you wearing?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, I do appreciate that Garbage Xander, Lesser Xander, whatever we want to call him, is dressed kind of like a cartoon character.
He really super is. It's so cute.
He really, like, I mean, we make the Scooby-Doo comparison a lot, but he really does look like someone just plucked him out of
he's Shaggy.
Scooby-Doo
He's
cartoon.
100% Shaggy.
He is.
Yeah.
He's adorable. But the thing that like just sparked so much joy for me is Anya's little nightie.
I know.
She's so and she's got her little like head wrap hair bow. Like she's sitting there listening to Xander on the answering machine, and she's clearly ready for bed.
Yes.
And I totally buy this almost old-fashioned look for her.
Yeah. Like you know how there's a certain period in your life that you just got like when you go out into the world and you see women like my age wearing blue eyeshadow, blue eyeliner. Like, that's because they hit a certain point and they're like, this look good. And they just stopped. Like, they just didn't change anything from that point forward, right?
I always wonder about that. Like, is there
I think there's a fashion freeze for some people. I think that they have, like, a certain look that I think they like. And they don't like change. Change is hard for a lot of people. Like a lot of people really struggle. I personally really like it, which is why my hair is always different, weird shades of pink.
It's different literally every time I see you, and it's
every
delightful.
time you see me, it's different. Yeah, because I'm a weirdo in that way. But I think most people don't like it. So I think that there's a certain point, like you find something that works for you at a particular time, and then like a lot of people just tend to stick with that thing, And I feel like I don't know what is this like maybe 1920s, maybe.
Well,
that time kind of thing.
I'm not a fashion expert. I'm more of a visual studies person. But the thing about any fashion item is it will loop back around.
Oh,
so
it
it's
will.
like
yes,
she looks a little bit old Hollywood.
Yes,
but also what I love so much about Anya's appearance, like full stop. It is just a tremendous opportunity for wardrobe and hair and makeup to do their stuff.
Oh, and to have so much fun with her. But it's funny because this is her nighttime look. Her nighttime look is all silk. And we see that again in Once More with Feeling during the number with her and Xander, right? Because she's wearing, her
1940s kind of
1940s. She's got a very 1940s. But in the daytime, she's fairly up to date.
But what's so funny about her, like, her costuming is she's new to the whole, like, human thing.
Right.
But she clearly has some well-established ideas about how things are supposed to go. Right. So that is just such a great challenge for visual storytelling. Anya loves beautiful things, but she also has this sense of wanting things to be correct. She has
her
idea.
list, right? We get a puppy or a car or a boat, right? Yeah.
Well, and she's had that from the beginning with Xander. She's like, okay, we are in a relationship now.
Right. Because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I am
This
human.
is what we're doing.
Please allow me to human it up, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting. And she has this list of how things are supposed to go, but she also doesn't really have a good sense of what is expected in the world, aka what is and is not, air quotes, appropriate for any given situation. And to be able to do that with costuming or hair or makeup is so like that just sounds like, I don't know, that sounds like wardrobe catnip to me. Like how do we how do we make her look cute and attractive? And of course we have this adorable canvas to work with as well. But how do we make her look like someone who is attracted to beautiful things, but also make her look a little bit off? Like she doesn't quite fit. And I love the little nightie. I love it. And the head wrap, bow, whatever. She's so cute, but she's also so out of sync with like where we are in contemporary life.
She's not the girl who has yummy sushi pajamas, right? Like she's lingerie, and like there is a certain thing to her that is, and extremely femme. Like she is extreme
feminine
femme.
to the
Right.
Yeah.
And her whole vengeance thing. And as we will discover later on, vengeance is not necessarily just about vengeance. You have to pick a particular, major. Like, she majors in women's vengeance. Like she is about like feminine rage basically.
Yeah.
And then she loses her rage and she doubles on the femme, Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A little bit. I like it. I like it so much. And also, I mean, Spike with his mannequin is hella creepy for me. It's creepy. But I like that he chose a light blue halter top for her because even in his like play acting scenario, he's still going to dress her as the heroine. Like he uses the villain deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, of course, he's going to put her in something that Buffy would wear, the halter top. I've patrolled in this halter many times.
Exactly.
But, light blue is our in American, United States, American romanticism. Light blue is our heroine color. It's our hero and our heroine color, which is another way that we know that clone Xander or double Xander is not bad guy Xander,
right?
Because he wears this blue button front. He's got his light
there
blue
you
going.
Go.
So,
oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I like it. I
don't know where that started, by the way. That light blue for heroes and heroines. I'm gonna guess that it's probably tied to the Virgin Mary somehow.
Entirely possible.
But it is one of those things in TV and movies that has been repeated so many times that
so
we all
bad guy doesn't wear light blue. Interesting.
We just do it. We know, like,
in
the
these are
same
visual
way,
cues, right?
in the same way that if you and I are talking to each other on camera and we cut from a shot of you to a shot of me, we know that means that you're looking at me or vice versa.
Right.
It's these like visual, these visual cues that we have that, were established at the beginning of cinema, and we all just speak that language. So we repeat that language. So you can also, of course, mess with it if you want to. For all of you
subvert it.
Creative. Yeah.
Right. Subvert that shit.
You can mess with it. But it's a great opportunity for foreshadowing, for giving us like a really great visual shorthand for who's who in the cast is what colors, associating certain colors with certain characters or certain moods. Or in the case of Buffy's hair, we can just like judge based on the curliness of Buffy's hair.
Right. Whether we're in bizarro space or not.
Just how bizarre is this world?
How off is the world today?
Exactly.
I also really love Toth. Like, I love Toth's whole thing. I love his sweeping out majestically. I love that he's got this drapey, cloaky thing. But also, like, they've got him all glowy in the face. And then during the fight scene in Xander's new apartment with Buffy, for the first time after seeing this episode like 8,000 times, right? I realized, oh my God, they did it with a freaking black light. Because you can see on the back of her that there is lighting from a black light on the back of her sweatshirt when she's fighting with him. And he doesn't glow unless he's like deep in the black light.
I love it.
It's so hilarious. And that's why his teeth glow the way they glow. Like,
I love the teeth.
I love the teeth. I know. That's it. That's how they made him glow. And I was like, wow, the world before, digital CG effects, like this is what they had to do is put a freaking black light in the room.
I love a good physical effect. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I will never not
really
love a physical effect.
But I love his whole design. I love his whole face. I love the glowy thing. I love the blaster stick. I love the fact that he's a demon with tech, right? You know how I feel about tech.
Yes. He's a demon with tech. He also knows his statuary.
Oh, he
Because when
does.
Giles comes at him, that's a fertility god. He's so great.
He knows the shit. I like Toth. Also, good plan, dude, for a villain plan to split Buffy up into a weak and strong Buffy and then take out the weak one.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, as like Monster of the Week plans go, that's a really good one.
It's very smart. I like it a lot. All right, so do you have a girl power moment of the week?
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
I think you have a girl power moment of the week, and I'm just going to co-sign it.
I do. I love Anya advocating for her kink. Can I just take them home? I'll bring them back in the morning. You can slap them together then. I like the way that she mentions it once and then does not give up.
Yes. Yeah.
She gets shut down and then just keeps going. She is not letting this go easily. And you know what? All right. Because if you have a very specific kink and it shows up, you kind of got to advocate for that,
It's my favorite part. My favorite part is Anya wanting to have sex with both Xanders because hell yeah. Like, hell yeah. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it.
I mean, yes, file under things to try on the yes, no, maybe list. Like, if anybody ever has a blasty.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to co-sign your favorite part. I was like, okay, now I got to find another favorite part, but it's so great. It's so great. I'm like, nothing comes close to that moment where Anya. So, girl power moment of the week, favorite part. It's all one thing. It is Anya advocating for her kink. I love it.
The only thing favorite part wise that I think comes close is everyone just being completely like, no, like
candles and pretense.
Giles. Candles and pretense.
Candles and pretense. No, it's absolutely delightful.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on social media. Lani is at Lani Diane Rich on Twitter, and I am at Noelle Aloud on Instagram. And the hashtag is still pretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our March producers: Sarah, Shelley, Kristen, Kevin, Alice, Erica, Abigail, West, and Jonathan. And this week's special message for our power producers: people say they're recycling. They're not recycling.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or call Riley a toff. It's a British expression. It means like moron.
We'll be back next time with Out of My Mind, the 4th episode of season 5. Until then, maybe we shouldn't do this reintegration thing right away. See, I can take the boys home and we can all have sex together and, just slap them back together in the morning.
I'm Dr. Paul Moffett of Clockworks Academy, and Lani asked me to come on and say a few things about Frankenstein. I shared some thoughts on the Patreon Discord, and she asked me to come and record some of those ideas to share in the podcast, and I am flattered and delighted to do so. So I loved on the Primeval Yoko Factor episode of Still Pretty when Lani and Noelle talked about how much Adam should have been motivated by a desire for community. The community is also, or should have been, like, constitutive or revealing of his identity. All of that stuff is big in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein right in the middle of the Romantic era of English literature, and one of the hallmarks of Romantic poetry of the Romantic era is its central fixation on the idea of the individual. The Romantic era is a time when poets and artists and musicians are reacting against what they'd seen as overly formulaic, overly dry, overly intellectual. Everything seemed to them to have been restrained and constrained. And the Romantic era is an era of revolution and emotion and emphasizing the importance of the individual who can change the world. So the big figures in Romantic poetry are Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and who am I forgetting? Blake. Poor Blake. I'm forgetting Blake. But in that list, The important ones for Mary Shelley are Lord Byron, who was a friend of hers and of her husband, and more importantly, perhaps, Percy Shelley, who was her husband. So Mary Shelley spends a lot of her time, both her reading time and her personal life, around Percy Shelley, who is writing this romantic poetry about the power of the individual who stands against society and does whatever they want to, and how brave and good that is. And Lord Byron, who's writing the same kind of poetry and kind of living that same kind of life. Percy Shelley was too, but Lord Byron even more, is in exile because he's such a individual who's not going to be constrained by society. And that influence was definitely present in Mary Shelley's life. She saw it in literature and she saw it in the people around her. Victor Frankenstein, the character who, the doctor, you probably know, Frankenstein, actually, Frankenstein is the doctor's name. So Victor Frankenstein, who creates the monster, is this kind of romantic hero with a capital R who does all the things that a romantic hero like Byron and Percy Shelley are writing about. Victor Frankenstein embodies a lot of that. He is a genius who is striking out on his own and making his own world and his own life and his own path and not being constrained by convention, and it's bad. And in Frankenstein, that's a bad thing. For Victor Frankenstein to be this romantic hero is a bad thing in Mary Shelley's book Frankenstein. And the subtitle of Frankenstein is Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus. Percy Shelley wrote a play called Prometheus Unbound. And Byron also, and the Romantic poets in general, they thought of Prometheus as this figure who represented the romantic ideal. He wants to give fire to humanity and defy the gods because he wants to do great things and be great, and the gods punish him for it, and it's the individual being crushed by the power, and he fights against them bravely, and they idolize Prometheus. And so the subtitle of Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus, Victor Frankenstein is a modern Prometheus who is going to give fire to a new species. And it's bad. It makes him a bad guy, and the results of his romantic individualism are bad. And Frankenstein's monster, too, is a romantic hero with a capital R. He's also, just like Victor, brilliant. He's self-educated, he's insightful, he's powerful, he learns to read just by listening to someone read on the other side of a door, and he quotes Milton, and he is bad. His individualism, these romantic ideals, turn out bad in Mary Shelley's book. Lots of people have noticed that Frankenstein is a very male book, and most of the characters in it are male. And it's written by a woman who writes about these men doing their manly genius man things, and it is monstrous. What Frankenstein's monster wants, more than anything, what motivates him more than anything, is he wants community, he wants love, he wants connection, he wants Victor to have been a father to him. And when Victor's unable to do that, when Victor's unable to be for the creature what he wants, Victor creates this thing and then doesn't care for it. That has terrible results. And what Frankenstein's monster craves is someone to love him, specifically Victor to love him. And when Victor isn't able to give him that, then Frankenstein's monster asks Victor to create a companion for him. And he specifically says he wants someone who is just as ugly as he is, who can be just as rejected by the world so that they can be together. Because for Frankenstein's monster, for Mary Shelley's imagination, being a romantic hero out on your own against the world is bad and not only painful, but it's monstrous, and it causes pain and suffering, not only for Victor, not only for his creature, but for all the people around them too. And the way that Mary Shelley presents all these romantic ideals as bad is because Frankenstein, the book Frankenstein, isn't actually romantic. It's written in the depths of the Romantic era, but it's not romantic, it's Gothic. And Gothic, Mary Shelley's not the inventor of Gothic. Gothic thrives at the same time as Romantic, and the Gothic literature and art and whatever is the dark side of Romantic. It takes a look at all the same things that Romantic art and literature does, and it shows how they can go wrong. That's all the stuff, right, that Adam on Buffy should have been about, and would have been so much better if he had been. The other thing I said on the Discord that I'll say here also is Lani referenced a part where the monster says friend. That is a reference to The Bride of Frankenstein, which is a 1935 sequel to Frankenstein in 1931, the movie. Both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are directed by James Whale and star Boris Karloff as the monster. And in 1931's Frankenstein, Boris Karloff's Frankenstein's monster doesn't speak at all. And in fact, Boris Karloff was opposed to letting him speak in the second movie because he thought the creature would be more sympathetic if he was more innocent, and he would be more innocent if he didn't speak. But there's a scene in The Bride of Frankenstein where the creature goes and sees a blind peasant in a cabin, and the blind peasant teaches him about language and teaches him good and bad and tells him that friends are good. Karloff and Whale in their movies really play up the creature's innocence and naivety. He's driven in these movies just as he is in the book by a desire for community and companionship above all else. And there's a lot that they change in the movie, but one of the things that I think the movies get really right about Frankenstein's monster is what motivates him. And that's what the creators of season 4 of Buffy don't get right about Adam, if you ask me. While I'm talking about James Whale, and Lani, feel free to edit this out if I'm going on too long. You do a dangerous thing by asking me to talk about Frankenstein, because I have literally 8 hours of material in a class on Frankenstein that you can take at clockworksacademy.com. So I could go on and on. But I'm just going to add one more thing because I added it on the Discord, and I added it on the Discord because it's so interesting, which is that James Whale, who directed Frankenstein the movie and The Bride of Frankenstein, was out as a gay man in the 1930s. And I think it's dangerous to read too much on creators' biography into their art. But I think it's very likely that James Whale, I can just imagine that being out as a gay man in the 1930s in Hollywood must have had some challenges that must have made a sense of alienation and a desire for community resonate strongly with James Whale. Although I suppose the desire for community resonates strongly with all of us. If you would like to hear lots more about Frankenstein and other courses that I offer, you can find those at clockworksacademy.com. I have been Dr. Paul Moffat. Thank you so very much, Lani, for giving me the opportunity to butt into your podcast. Goodbye.